sorry to keep you waiting. This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in beautiful New York City. We have the greatest mayor in the world, Donald Trump, telling the Wall Street Journal late Sunday that he's reviewing footage of Alex Pretty's killing, said he doesn't like it, and that, quote, we will be leaving Minneapolis sometime soon. Trump offered no timeline, but said his agents have done a wonderful job. When asked if he wanted to defend the agent who killed the ICU nurse early Saturday morning, that would be the agents, Trump said, we're looking, we're reviewing everything, and we'll come out with a determination, unquote. This was a 5-minute phone call late Sunday night with the Wall Street Journal. So he says a lot of things, but right now he says he's leaving Minnesota. He also said he wasn't invading Venezuela. No word yet as to whether Minnesota police will be allowed to take the lead in this investigation. Local and state police began looking into the January 7th murder of Renee Good by an ICE agent, but Department of Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem immediately said the state had no jurisdiction, muscled them out, and the investigation got turned over to the FBI, which immediately began looking into Renee Good's wife, Becca, to see if she was part of some vast left-wing conspiracy. They're not looking into Jonathan Ross. The Hennepin County DA, I think her name is Moriarty, Mary Moriarty, I'm not sure, and the state attorney general, Keith Ellison, asked the judge to issue an injunction preventing the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security from tampering with any evidence at Saturday's murder scene, which Minnesota police say they are being kept from. That judge, a Trump appointee, on Sunday issued an injunction ordering the FBI and DHS not to tamper with any of the evidence. Greg Bovino, the border commander in charge of ICE operations in Minnesota, telling reporters the ICE agents who shot Alex Pretty are the real victims in all this. Right, and Donald Trump was the real victim in the E. Jean Carroll trial. Bill Esselstyn, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name properly. He doesn't deserve to have his name pronounced properly. He is the troublesome first assistant U.S. attorney for the Central District of California. He said after the killing, quote, that he's talking about Alex Pretty, the murder victim, this is the Trump appointee to the Central District of California, U.S. attorney, Bill Esselstyn said, quote, if you approach law enforcement with a gun, there's a high likelihood they will be legally justified in shooting you, adding, don't do it. Well, Alex Pretty was not approaching the ICE agents with a gun. He was approaching them with something far more dangerous to ICE agents, a cell phone pressed on record. The National Rifle Association, which donated more to Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, more than anybody, with the exception of Vladimir Putin, the NRA issuing a rare condemnation of Trump's U.S. attorney's statement. They said the NRA said what Bill Esselstyn said is dangerous and wrong. Well, there now seems to be incontrovertible evidence that federal agents had taken Pretty's gun, had him pinned to the ground before 10 shots were fired. I'll have more on this later in the show. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama condemning the Trump administration over the Minneapolis murder. Bill Clinton saying Trump is asking people to watch that video and then not believe their own eyes. President Obama calling the shooting, quote, a heartbreaking tragedy. In a joint statement with his wife, Michelle, they said, quote, it should also be a wake-up call to every American, regardless of party, that many of our core values as a nation are increasingly under assault. President Obama said, quote, rather than trying to impose some semblance of discipline and accountability over the agents they've deployed, the president and current administration officials seem eager to escalate the situation while offering public explanations for the shootings of Mr. Pretty and Renee Good that aren't informed by any serious investigation and that appear to be directly contradicted by video evidence, unquote. This is why it's important to pay attention to people like Barack and Michelle and to protest so you don't feel crazy, because that's what Trump and his officials are trying to do. They're trying to drive you crazy, like Vice President J.D. Vance, Yale Law School graduate. He's blaming Minneapolis protesters for the shooting. This is why you need to hang out with like-minded Democrats. Go to the protests. It's for your own mental health. J.D. Vance called the protests in Minneapolis riots. He said they're being engineered by radical leftists who believe in the Constitution. That makes you a radical leftist. In 2024, while running with Donald Trump, J.D. Vance said, unlike Mike Pence, had I been vice president on January 6, I would have refused to certify the election, Mr. Law and Order. California Governor Gavin Newsom calling on Kristi Noem to resign. Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen, a moderate Democrat, becoming the first Senate Democrat calling for Noem's impeachment. A bill containing 3 articles of impeachment of Noem currently has 100 Democratic House members' support. Depending on what day it is, all it would take is 3, possibly even 1 Republican to switch sides, and Noem could be impeached. New reports that Iran's leadership slaughtered 36,000 protesters in a 2-day crackdown beginning on January 8th. There are reports that Iran's security forces broke into hospitals and began shooting wounded protesters. Great, giving Donald Trump ideas. Winter Storm Fern hit 34 states, leaving 1 million Americans without power. 11,000 flights were canceled, so it was a normal travel day. The BBC and The Guardian reporting that so far 9, possibly 13 people are reported dead from the winter storm. To give you an idea, let me go back there for a second, got ahead of myself. To give you an idea of the breadth and depth of this storm, we have 2 dead in Louisiana and 5 dead in New York City. But the good news is Kristi Noem is in charge of FEMA, so help is on its way in an imaginary world. Well, Wired reporting a federal judge in Minnesota ruled ICE agents violated the Fourth Amendment by breaking into the home of a Liberian national in Minnesota. They broke in with just an administrative warrant. Garrison Gibson, we talked about Garrison Gibson, the Liberian national. His door was kicked open earlier this month. ICE agents pointed guns at him, his wife, his children. They took him into detention, shipped him from Minneapolis to Texas. He has since been released. Gibson asked to see a warrant. They didn't present one when they kicked open the door because they didn't have the right warrant. They had an administrative warrant. So on the way to the Whipple building in downtown Minneapolis, they presented an administrative warrant. The judge said ICE agents can only kick open doors with judicial warrants. Well, this, after the Associated Press reports a Department of Homeland Security internal memo now says ICE can kick open doors with administrative warrants. DHS policy, Department of Homeland Security policy now is ICE agents no longer need administrative warrants. They no longer require a judge to sign off on this. It can be anybody who's a top official at the DHS. So Jim Jordan is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and he was interviewed by Major Garrett of CBS News. And I watched Jim Jordan just lie, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Jim Jordan said he's not concerned that DHS no longer requires judicial warrants. He said it's okay because they're going to use the judge's over at the Department of Homeland Security to sign the administrative warrants. He said there's no difference between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant. That's a lie. That is a lie. You need the judicial branch to sign a judicial warrant. An administrative warrant, and it's in DHS policy, that in order to kick open a door, ICE agents need a judicial warrant. They're changing the policy, and Jim Jordan lied when he said judges from the DHS sign administrative warrants. He said immigration judges sign administrative warrants. He is an effing liar. That is a lie. Administrative warrants are rarely signed by immigration judges. They're always, practically all the time, signed by some DHS officer, just a flunky, not a lawyer, not a judge, just somebody like Greg Bovino. Jim Jordan is a liar. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman. In New York City, here is the latest on ICE agents in Minneapolis killing 37-year-old Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse at a local veterans hospital. They killed him early Saturday morning while he attempted to shield a woman from male ICE agents. Witnesses and video clearly indicate Preddy was not holding a gun, but instead a cell phone when ICE agents wrestled him to the ground and then fired at least 10 bullets into him in a matter of 5 seconds. So here is Fox News' Maria Bartiromo. She's a longtime Trump flunky and supplicant who had no trouble perpetuating the stolen election myth even after January 6. On Sunday, she appeared on her show to refuse to fall prey to White House talking points instructing administration officials to go out there and convince Americans not to believe their own eyes. Here she is talking to Chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Republican Jim Comer. Here's Maria Bartiromo. Is that our sound seems to be muted. I'm not, hang on for 1 second. What's going on here? That is Maria Bartiromo. The sound, I'm not a lip reader. I don't know what she's, wait, now being told that's not Maria Bartiromo. That's actually a bovino. That's a bovino who can scratch its own back. Okay, here she is. We got it? Okay, sorry for the confusion. Here is Maria Bartiromo talking with Chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Republican Jim Comer. Here we go.
Another individual is dead at the hands of Border Patrol. Let's be clear. We do not know if there was any pushback from this individual who was armed. We do not have evidence that he was waving a gun, doing anything to threaten Border Patrol. He had his phone and he was shooting, he was viewing and recording the incident. That's what he was doing, recording the incident. Mm-hmm. What is your reaction? And you are an elected official. What can you do about it?
What can I do about it? Figure out a way to blame Hunter Biden, because that's all I really know how to do. Later in that interview, Jim Comer, another Trump supplicant and flunky, who spent 2 years trying to impeach Joe Biden, even Comer said there needs to be an investigation into what really happened. But, there's a lot of talk going on. Trump giving an interview with the Wall Street Journal saying we're going to be out of Minneapolis soon. You hear this. What is that? What is this? Hang on. I'm sorry. College girlfriend says James Comer abused her. This is from the Courier Journal, May 4th, 2015. This has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Why are we looking at this? A woman who dated gubernatorial candidate James Comer. Oh, this is when he was running for governor in 2015. A woman who dated gubernatorial candidate James Comer while the two were in college, said in a letter to the Courier-Journal on Monday that he was physically and mentally abusive to her during what she said was a 2-year relationship. Did James E. Comer ever hit me? Yes, wrote Marilyn Thomas, who attended Western Kentucky University with Comer in the early 19... Are we done here? Oh, there's more. In the letter, Thomas does not offer specific details of the alleged physical abuse other than to say Comer struck her. She told a reporter that she never filed a police complaint against him. In the letter, she said she had been emotionally weak at the time. Quote, everything I did, everywhere I went, and everyone with whom I interacted had to be approved by James Comer, she wrote. Consequences were violent and swift otherwise, unquote. She said Comer became enraged in 1991 after they visited a Louisville abortion clinic and learned that she had used his real name on a form requiring proof that she had an escort to drive her home from her abortion. Are we done here? So why is this up here? Okay. Wendy Curley, who said she shared a dorm room at Western Kentucky with Thomas, said that Thomas and Comer had a very rocky relationship. I would see bruises on her wrists and stuff where she'd say, oh, I ran into a table, I fell, just that kind of stuff, Curley said. Curley said Thomas never told her she was being abused. It was always something to cover for him. She didn't want anybody to know that he was abusive to her. Okay, are we done? She also said Comer took Thomas for an abortion. Quote, I know she ended up getting pregnant in like October of 1991 and had an abortion in the beginning of November. And I remember him seeing her to the dorm and just dropping her off after they got back from the abortion, Curley said. Thomas said she still has paperwork from the visit to the clinic, that would be the abortion. Quote, I kept that piece of paper as a reminder of what desperation and rock bottom feels like. For more than 20 years, that piece of paper has been a source of anxiety and shame, but it was mine. It was only mine. She said the paper is in a lockbox at a Kentucky bank, and she didn't have immediate access to it. In the letter, Thomas said that Comer once called her parents at 2 a.m. to make violent threats against me. Mary Rose Thomas, Marilyn Thomas's 83-year-old mother, said in an interview that Comer called her home one morning some 25 years ago. Quote, I couldn't understand everything he was saying, but he said something about your daughter's going to get killed. It was something like that. All right. I don't know what that had to do with the show. I apologize. Anyway, where am I? Oh, yes, Comer. Jim Comer, head of House Oversight Committee, Republican. Apparently, he drove his girlfriend to an abortion clinic, and she had an abortion. I'm sure it wasn't his child. Comer saying there needs to be an investigation into the killing of Alex Preddy. He wants to get, he said, to the bottom of whether or not the Hennepin County coroner signed the death certificate with an auto pen. It's the only thing he cares about. Was there an auto pen involved? Well, the Associated Press is reporting that there are calls inside the Republican Party for a deeper investigation into this shooting. As I just mentioned, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, who drives women to abortion clinics apparently, he did in fact become the highest-ranking Republican in Washington, D.C. on Sunday to say Donald Trump should remove the ICE agents and Border Patrol officers from Minnesota. But he couldn't say it without slamming Democrats. Comer said, quote, if I were President Trump, I would almost think about it, okay? If the mayor and the governor are going to put our ICE officials in harm's way and there's a chance of losing more, innocent lives or whatever, then maybe go to another city. Go to another city where you're welcome, where people are saying, hey, can you kick open our doors and terrorize 5-year-old children and kill 37-year-old mothers? See how it works? ICE is in harm's way, not the citizens of Minneapolis. James Comer's saying, if I were President Trump, why put ICE officials in harm's way? Who's in harm's way? This month, ICE shot, make sure we remember what's going on in the month of January, which it still is. This month, ICE shot 2 innocent people to death, Alex Preddy and Renee Good. But it's ICE that's being put in harm's way because the mayor of Minneapolis, the governor of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, the state attorney general, they are asking citizens to record ICE with their cell phones so we can figure out what they're doing. So that's putting ICE in harm's way because several people recorded ICE agent Jonathan Ross, who allegedly put 4 holes into Renee Good and then allegedly muttered, effing bitch. Yeah, there's a conspiracy to put ICE agents in harm's way when protesters conspire to what? Gather peacefully in below freezing weather to say they don't like their Fourth and First Amendment rights getting violated? That's the conspiracy? Alaska Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski said the death of Preddy calls into question the adequacy, I love this, the adequacy of the training ICE and Border Patrol officers are receiving. I misspoke on the last show. He was killed by Border Patrol officers, not ICE agents. So thank you for correcting me. Jonathan Ross, the alleged killer of Renee Good, is an ICE agent. These, I believe, were Border Patrol officers, although we don't know their names, so we don't really know. So Lisa Murkowski saying it calls into question the adequacy of the training of ICE and Border Patrol officers. Senator, this isn't about training. Trump and Noem are recruiting. It's an issue of recruiting, not training. Trump and Noem are going out of their way to recruit rabid rageaholics to come work for ICE. It's not an issue of training. It's an issue of why do we even have ICE in the first place? And who are these half men who want to work for ICE? You can't train an ICE agent. Can't train them. Can't train an ICE agent not to hold a pregnant woman down, shoot pepper spray in her face, and then drag her through the frozen streets of Minneapolis. That is an actual photograph of that being done, okay? Look at this. There is an epidemic right now of ICE agents holding women down and shooting them in the face with pepper spray. I guess because ICE agents are getting even with all those women who sprayed them in the face with pepper spray. Sure, ICE agents have had a lot of mace sprayed in their face 2 minutes into a date, which is why I have no idea why ICE agents even need gas masks. They must have developed an immunity to chemical irritants from all the dates who use them on them. So look, it's not about providing better law enforcement training. It's about providing years of life to these guys in a psychiatric group home. These are not law enforcement officials. You work for ICE. You're not a law enforcement official. You're a mental defective. And we know these types of men. They've been with us since before the scriptures. They are what we evolved from. These are hominids or what who think because they have opposable thumbs and walk upright, they're humans. Now I'm going to be accused of dehumanizing ICE agents. I'm not dehumanizing them. Dehumanizing means they were once humans. You have to be human to be dehumanized. So anybody who holds a woman down and hits her in the face with pepper spray cannot be dehumanized because they were never human. That's not how human beings behave. There is something seriously wrong with these men. They need help. We need to give them treatment, not guns and a badge. I'm not calling for any violence. I'm just saying take away their guns, take away their badges. I'm not dehumanizing them. In order to be dehumanized, you have to have once been humanized. This is not how humans behave. Humans do not hold a woman down and hit her face with pepper spray. So I'm sorry, Senator Murkowski. Saying ICE agents need better training is identical to claiming after a mass shooting, we need more red flag laws to identify the mentally ill. No, we need to get rid of the guns. The problem isn't mental illness. The problem is guns. I know it's hard for people to believe, and you should just Google this. Mental illness has nothing to do with mass shootings. Study after study shows that the young white men who shoot up schools are not suffering from any mental illness. They're not suffering from any identifiable mental illness that can be red flagged before the shooting takes place. So it's not an issue of mental illness. But calling mass shootings a mental health issue instead of a genuine problem of too many guns, well, that lets weapons manufacturers off the hook, and they can sell more guns, when in fact, the mentally ill are not dangerous, guns are. So, mental illness. Is this being able to predict who's going to be an active shooter? Red flag laws, the myth that psychiatrists can notice a pattern and identify a potential mass shooter before it happens. Okay? So, is this ICE agent mentally ill when he fired a pepper ball directly into the face of Pastor David Black? It's a pastor getting hit in the face that close. He was outside the Broadview ICE detention facility in the suburbs of Chicago. Well, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can tell you there's some serious unresolved trauma going on here. Shooting a pastor in the face, well, there's your red flag that someone needs serious help, and it is that ICE agent. The red flag is he's shooting a pastor, a peaceful protester, a pastor, in the face. There's your red flag. Senator Murkowski then said she was worried about our Constitution and said ICE agents do not have a carte blanche in carrying out their duties. ICE agents do not have a no carte blanche in carrying out their duties. So she's mangling French and English in one sentence. ICE agents do not have a no carte blanche in carrying out their duties. Well, you gave them a carte blanche, whatever that means. As a matter of fact, Senator, you voted last year to give them a no carte blanche when you voted in favor of the Laken Riley Act, which passed the Senate 64-35 with 16 Democrats voting yes. Remember the Laken Riley Act? I talked about it on the last show because I was saying ICE may not be a lawless agency when you look at the laws that have empowered them. They're obeying the laws, and they're obeying Supreme Court rulings like Brett Kavanaugh's concurring opinion from September, which created the Kavanaugh stop. It gave ICE agents permission to stop and question anybody based on their ethnicity. Like I've been saying now, I'm not so sure ICE is a lawless agency. I think we've passed enough laws so they may not be in violation of anything. The Laken Riley Act. And this makes me really angry. So let me just calm down here. The Laken Riley Act, thank you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she came up with this, was a nurse who was killed by an undocumented immigrant who had a criminal record. So it gives ICE and border enforcement officers carte blanche to arrest any immigrant who has been so much as charged with the crime. Thanks to the Laken Riley Act, any immigrant who's been charged with a crime, not convicted, charged, can be deported. If a prosecutor or a judge drops the charges, doesn't matter. Thanks to the Laken Riley Act, ICE agents can detain and deport anybody who's ever been charged with a crime. So we now live in a country where an immigrant with all their papers in order, they come work for you, and, you don't want to pay them, so you call the police. You make up something, and they charge this immigrant whose papers are all in order, they charge him with a crime. And after this immigrant is charged with a crime, you call the ICE tip line, and that immigrant disappears along with your debt to that immigrant. What Laken Riley does is create an incredibly compliant workforce of immigrants, terrified of being accused, charged, not convicted, just charged with the crime. That's what you voted for, Lisa Murkowski, because you wanted a terrified workforce, compliant. Remember right after COVID, it was hard to get people to go back to work. They had a sense of entitlement. So they passed the Laken Riley Act for labor to get in line. You voted in favor of ICE agents having, a no carte blanche in carrying out their duties. No carte blanche. I don't know what that means. And she's one of the good ones, by the way, Lisa Murkowski. Kevin Stitt is the Republican governor of Deep Red, Oklahoma. Notice is News of the United States, and people should check out Notice, Notus. It is one of the best news organizations out there. Notice, Notus, News of the United States, reporting that Kevin Stitt, the Republican governor of Deep Red, Oklahoma, he said over the weekend that Trump is asked about the shootings in Minneapolis and the ICE agents. Kevin Stitt, the Republican governor of Deep Red, Oklahoma, said something very brave. He said, Trump is getting bad advice. Yeah, he's getting bad advice. It could never be Trump's fault. It's his advisors giving him bad advice. The shootings, the immigration raids, the suspension of habeas corpus, it's not Trump's fault. He's just getting bad advice. These effing cowards. They're tough-talking, shit-kicking cowboy boots, and they just cower in front of Donald Trump. So brave Republican Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma says, I think the death of Americans, what we're seeing on TV, is causing deep concerns. Americans don't like what they're seeing right now, which is why ICE agents are shooting people with cell phones. These big, strong, white Republican men, too chicken shit to say Donald Trump is a fascist because they don't want to offend Mein Fuhrer. So they say he's getting bad advice. Go F yourself. Phil Scott is the Republican governor of Vermont. He's never been a supporter of Donald Trump. He is a Republican, though. According to Sasha Goldstein, who covers Governor Scott, for 7 days, that's Vermont's independent news source, Sasha Goldstein writes, Governor Scott, Republican, has been timid when it comes to speaking out against Donald Trump. But notice News of the United States reporting that Governor Scott is breaking with Trump on border enforcement in Minneapolis. Governor Scott said we need a reset to restore the constitutionality of border enforcement. The governor said if the courts won't step up, then Congress must enact new laws. Okay, how about repealing Laken Riley? How about getting rid of Laken Riley? See, the immigration conversation has been so dumbed down by Trump, lawmakers are too afraid to repeal Laken Riley because then they'll all be seen as soft on crime. And it's better politically, at least in the Republican Party and among so-called moderate Democrats, it's better to be seen as soft on the Constitution than it is to be seen as soft on crime, even though crime is at a secular all-time low. The murder rate is the lowest it's been since 1900. But we got to be tough on crime and soft on our Constitution. Sasha Goldstein, writing for 7 days, reports that Vermont's Governor Scott, Republican, said, quote, it's not acceptable for American citizens to be killed by federal agents for exercising their God-given and constitutional rights to protest their government. The Republican governor of Vermont went on to say, quote, at best, and this is why it's good so you don't feel crazy. He said something where you go, okay, this guy gets it. He wouldn't support getting rid of Laken Riley, but at least he gets it. He goes, at best, these federal immigration operations are a complete failure of coordination of acceptable public safety and law enforcement practices, training, and leadership. At worst, it's a deliberate federal intimidation and incitement of American citizens that's resulting in the murder of Americans. Again, enough is enough, unquote. He's saying what we're all thinking, and that is Trump is inciting people in Minneapolis to protest so he can declare the Insurrection Act. And we all know this. We all know this. Vermont's independent senator, Bernie Sanders, according to 7 days, it's a Vermont newspaper, he called the killing a petty murder, adding, quote, all federal agents, ICE and Border Patrol must be withdrawn immediately from Minneapolis and other cities now. As I said earlier, the Associated Press is reporting that there's a growing chorus inside the GOP for some kind of accountability for this ICE murder, something we didn't hear after the shooting of Renee Good. For some reason, some are calling this shooting an inflection point. I hope so, but I doubt it. I doubt it. Countless Republicans like Lindsey Graham and J.D. Vance said the people who stormed the Capitol should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law when asked about January 6th. But then when Donald Trump pardoned people who were doing time for seditious conspiracy, these very same Republicans immediately pivoted and said, well, the January 6ers are political prisoners who were treated very unfairly. We saw Capitol police officers, speaking of law and order, we saw Capitol police officers on January 6th crushed by Trump's goons. And yet Trump pardons them. Last week, Jack Smith is called before Jim Jordan's Judiciary Committee, and Republicans try to paint Jack Smith as the villain. So, of course, the hypocrisy is beyond parody. A 2-year-old could see this. We have to worry about the safety of ICE agents who are murdering innocent civilians, but the people who sent more than 140 Capitol police officers to the hospital, 5 dying in the immediate aftermath, those people are patriots, political prisoners. Mike Johnson won't even obey the law. They passed a law that ordered the Congress, the House of Representatives, to hang a plaque honoring the Capitol police officers who protected his sorry ass on January 6th. He won't hang the plaque. Now, Thune in the Senate is going to hang the plaque, but Mike Johnson, too chicken shit to hang a plaque honoring the Capitol police officers because that would offend Donald Trump. And then they ask us to believe that Renee Good and Alex Preddy had to be killed because they were a danger to law enforcement. So yeah, James Comer now says, I think there should be an investigation. He will change his tune once the Trump attack machine tries to convince the American people that Preddy, just like Renee Good, deserved to be killed. So that murder happened early Saturday morning. You watch what happens Monday. They will start making up crap and investigating Preddy the same way they investigated and tried to demonize Renee Good. White House spokesliar Carolyn Leavitt not backing down. And that is the MO, never give them an inch. Although Trump, 5-minute phone call with the Wall Street Journal late Sunday, saying we'll be leaving Minneapolis pretty soon. But that's what he does. He straddles, he tries to lure gullible moderates. Like, oh, I'm a nice guy. He's very good at that. The White House isn't sorry. Didn't say they were sorry this guy died. The BBC reporting that Carolyn Leavitt, that's the White House spokesliar, she responded to the murder of Preddy by blaming the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz. She said he wants chaos. It's Tim Walz who wants the chaos. It's Tim Walz who sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll. Tim Walz wants the chaos. Well, you know, according to the White House, the mayor of Minneapolis, the governor of Minnesota, the attorney general, they're inciting chaos. Why? Why would they be inciting chaos? Caroline Leavitt, what are they conspiring to do? You're not going to say it yet, but I see where you're going. They're inciting chaos to justify their invocation of the Insurrection Act so they can cancel the midterms and fend off a total bloodbath for their party, right? That's why they're inciting chaos. That's obviously what's going on. Jacob Fry, the mayor, Keith Ellison, the state attorney general, Governor Walz, they know they're tanking in the polls. It's going to be really bad for Democrats in November. So they want to create so much chaos, Donald Trump will have no other option than invoking the Insurrection Act and canceling the midterms, even though he doesn't want to. Or Caroline Leavitt might say, the Democrats invoked their own Insurrection Act, and they canceled the midterms. That's probably what we'll hear from this White House. The BBC reporting that Kristi Noem, the head of Homeland Security on Sunday, saying that Trump is certainly considering invoking the Insurrection Act, and she has discussed it with him, she said, many times. Well, look at this insurrection, because Stephen Miller says there's an insurrection going on in Minneapolis. This is thousands of insurrectionists peacefully marching in freezing cold Friday, demanding ICE leave. Well, Trump says he's leaving. Despite several Republicans and Trump, James Comer, saying Trump might leave or should leave, they're not leaving. They're not leaving. Notice reporting that the White House said President Trump is not leaving Minneapolis. He promised to carry out the largest mass deportation operation of criminal illegal aliens. He's keeping his promise, and our heroic ICE officers will not be removed from Minneapolis because they are only going after murderers and rapists. Well, if the White House says that, it must be true. So I apologize. They're only going after murderers and rapists, the worst of the worst. You mean recruiting? When you say going after murderers and rapists, you mean recruiting them to work for ICE. We're going after murderers and rapists. Come work with us. Is that? No, that's unfair. I apologize. I take that back. ICE agents, they're heroes. So thank you, ICE. Thank you, Greg Bovino, on behalf of the ungrateful citizens of Minneapolis. Thank you, ICE, for sitting on a pregnant woman in Minneapolis and then dragging her through the icy streets because you didn't like what she said to you. How dare a mouthy pregnant woman talk back to a fire hose of a half man? Not a fire hose, a fire, what do they call it? Damn it. Sorry. Not a fire hose. Anyway, thank you, ICE. Thank you for putting this Minneapolis grandmother, Susan Tincher, in her place for having the temerity to ask a masked man with no ID, "Are you with ICE?" This is a picture of Grandma Susan Tincher getting thrown face first to the ground right before she was strip searched, sent to a detention center. They got out wire cutters to remove her wedding ring. Well, I guess they answered her question when she asked, "Are you with ICE?" Yeah, that pretty much answers the question, doesn't it? Thank you, ICE, for tackling and shackling a decorated Iraqi war veteran, wounded in battle, Purple Heart recipient, fireplug. Sorry. I got three things going on in my brain at all times. Fireplug. These ICE agents who look like fire plugs. But unlike fire plugs, they like getting pissed on by a dog. Thank you, ICE, for tackling and shackling a decorated Iraqi war veteran, wounded in battle, Purple Heart recipient. Thank you for detaining him in downtown Minneapolis's Whipple building for 8 hours, unable to speak to his family or a lawyer. Thank you. These Iraqi war veterans, these wounded Iraqi war veterans have to learn that when an ICE agent says, "Get out of the way," you get out of the way immediately. That's all he did. He was watching ICE arrest two young men on the streets, and several ICE agents told him to get out of the way, and they tackled him. Wounded Iraqi war veteran. Thank you, ICE. Very brave. Thank you for spraying tear gas into an SUV containing a family, including a small child, who then was overwhelmed by the chemical irritant that her family had to perform CPR on her while they waited for medics to rush her to the hospital. Thank you for spraying a young girl in the face. How old is this kid? A year old? Thank you for treating children like adults. It's so insulting to talk down to kids, and ICE agents get it. They see no difference between an adult and a 1-year-old kid, and they sprayed tear gas. She almost died. They had to perform CPR. But they're saying, we believe children should be treated like adults. Thank you, ICE. Thank you, ICE, for using 5-year-old Liam Ramos as bait to knock on his family's door so ICE could arrest his family. Liam is now separated from his mother. His mother is still in Minneapolis, but 5-year-old Liam Ramos is 1,000 miles away inside the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, Texas. Thank you, ICE, for separating a 5-year-old preschooler because you've gone after the murderers and the rapists. We know how dangerous 5-year-olds are, right? So, all right. How is this effing legal? This kid has protected legal status. He's an asylum seeker from Ecuador, as is his father and his mother. He's got a case pending before an immigration judge. How is it possible that a 5-year-old child is separated from his mother and sent to the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, Texas? Again, do human beings do this? Who does this? So thank you, ICE, for arresting 2 weeks ago a United States citizen in Minneapolis because he spoke with an accent. How dare he speak with an accent? And thank you for arresting a Somali American citizen, detaining her for 2 days, throwing her to the ground, calling her the N-word. She then had to be rushed to the hospital because ICE agents threw her to the ground so hard she suffered a minor concussion. Thank you, ICE, for keeping us safe from people like Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Thank you, ICE. The question, of course, is who's going to keep us safe from you? Who's going to keep us safe from ICE? I have trouble watching this video of Alex Preddy's execution. I've watched it a couple of times. I have to admit it's confusing. So I'm going on professional analysis of the videos. I'm not a forensic scholar. The New York Times did a thorough and complete analysis of the footage, and they said it clearly shows that Preddy was not aiming or holding a gun. Even Maria Bartiromo, of all people, said that. He was never any danger to ICE. Many analysts of the video say, and I'm going to give receipts, a lot of MAGA people. I want to see receipts. Okay. Forensic analysis of the videos say Preddy was shot after ICE agents took the 9mm gun he was carrying. They say he had a 9mm gun on him, but was not holding or aiming it. And from what I've read, all forensics professionals say, now pay attention, 10 shots were pumped into him after ICE agents had taken the gun from him. They had him pinned, they took his gun, and then, after they took his gun, They pumped 10 bullets into him in 5 seconds. CNN conducted a frame-by-frame review. The New York Times, The Guardian, Just Security, and Hearst Television all concluded from video analysis and witnesses that the 10 shots were fired after Preddy was pinned to the ground. ICE agents had taken the gun from his body, and then they pumped at least 10 bullets into him. Minnesota is an open carry state, meaning you can carry a concealed weapon on you everywhere, so long as you have a permit. And police say Preddy was licensed to carry that gun. It was not against the law in Minnesota that day to show up at a protest with a concealed weapon. It should be. I still believe only law enforcement should be allowed to carry guns. And I still believe it, as evidenced by Saturday morning's killing. I believe law enforcement, all law enforcement, is terrified of all the guns out there, and their trigger fingers keep getting itchier and itchier as more and more Americans are carrying weapons. Gun rights activists insist the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. So they want every civilian carrying a gun because that's how you stop shootings. Well, by every standard, Alex Preddy was a good guy with a gun. An ICU nurse at the VA. Nobody had a bad thing to say about Alex Preddy, a gentle soul who died protecting a woman from an ICE agent. What we seem to know, and again, I've seen the videos, they're difficult to watch, they're difficult for me to figure out. But what I'm reading from forensic analysis, what we seem to know is not ICE agents, Border Patrol. We're being told they're Border Patrol officers, but who knows? They won't give us their names. Border Patrol officers tackled a good guy with a gun who was attempting to protect a female from ICE agents who were shoving her. It took 5, 6 border agents to wrestle Preddy to the ground. They were beating him. And then 1 or 2 ICE agents apparently saw there was a 9mm gun somewhere in his jacket, and according to all reports, they pinned him, took the gun, 10 shots in 5 seconds. So I'm not an expert, but it looks to me like what happened Saturday morning in Minneapolis was a mini police riot. Now, this happens all the time. Chicago, 1968, is the first time when the police started beating up protesters at the convention. We first began hearing psychologists talk about police riots. Police riot. Police riot. I saw it during the Black Lives Matter protests. It's why hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars have been paid out to Black Lives Matter protesters in civil damages. Police riot. It's a psychological phenomenon. It happens, according to psychiatrists and psychologists and mental health experts, it happens when law enforcement officers find themselves in high-stress situations and they fall prey to groupthink because they're part of a team. You know, that's what you do. You give up your individuality for the team. So they begin to feed off each other's emotions. Everything's symbiotic, especially when you look at this takedown of Preddy, when you're in close proximity, as they were wrestling and then beating Preddy to the ground. And there's groupthink that morphs into group emotion. They all begin to feel the same anger, rage, fear, and then confusion because they found a gun on the suspect. And even though the gun, all experts are saying this, the gun had been taken from Preddy, the agents, in a cloud of fearful confusion, anger, rage, they begin to ingest nonverbal cues from each other. And all it takes in this mini police riot is for one or two of these officers to snap, and then they all snap. We think two snapped. It's contagious. Now, in America, it's considered sacrilege and unpatriotic to question our soldiers and our police. But our founding fathers, if you read the Bill of Rights, most of the Bill of Rights are about protecting citizens from the people who killed Renee Good and Alex Preddy. If you read the Bill of Rights, if you read our Constitution, any man or woman with power over another person's body should never be trusted and always be questioned. So now we have a good guy with a gun shot to death. A good guy with a gun killed for recording ICE agents while at the same time attempting to shield a woman from an ICE agent attempting to use unnecessary force on a peaceful protester who just happened to be a woman. And it's twisting gun rights activists into knots because they want people carrying weapons, especially to a protest, because that, they insist, makes people safe. Kristi Noem, the noted puppy killer, she's a gun enthusiast. The BBC reporting Kristi Noem on Sunday said Preddy should not have been carrying a weapon to an anti-ICE protest. Unless, of course, it's Kyle Rittenhouse. That's okay. Rittenhouse killed 2 Black Lives Matter protesters, injured 1 because he feared for his life. The jury acquitted him, and he's now a favorite among the right wing. People raise money for his defense because he killed 2 Black Lives Matter protesters, injured 1. He's a symbol to the right wing of why we need a heavily armed citizenry, because we need people like Kyle Rittenhouse to show up to a Black Lives Matter protest and kill 2 innocent BLM protesters and injuring 1. And he became a hero. For doing what? What did he accomplish other than kill 2 innocent people? What did he accomplish? Why is he a hero on the right? Well, he killed 2 Black Lives Matter protesters with a gun. But now we're being told an anti-ICE protester can't show up to an anti-ICE protest with a gun because why? Why? Because ICE agents might get angry when they see that gun as they're wrestling him to the ground. And when they see that gun, they'll be fearful and use that as an excuse to put 10 shots in him in 5 seconds after they pinned him to the ground and took the gun from him. Greg Bovino on the Sunday shows is refusing to back down on his claim that Preddy was aiming a gun at ICE agents. Right. And Greg Bovino is 6'5" and can read at a third grade level. Why is Bovino lying? Why? Because his idea of leadership is we protect our own being ICE agents, Border Patrol officers, not Americans. Americans are not his own. So we pay law enforcement to protect us, and people like Greg Bovino think it's us versus them being American citizens. This is what they think. This is what Greg Bovino thinks. It's us versus them. American citizens are just looking for any excuse to destroy the life of a career ICE agent simply because a white lesbian said to him, "I have no trouble with you, bro. I'm not angry." Where does she get off saying that to an ICE agent? Where did Renee Good have the audacity to say to Jonathan Ross, the alleged shooter, "I have no trouble with you, bro. I'm not angry." And then she just drove off. I mean, he had no choice but to fire 4 shots into her. And as she lay dying, someone muttered underneath their breath, "Effing bitch." Be nice to do a forensic analysis to find out if that was Jonathan Ross's voice. But Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, is too busy trying to prove that Renee Good's wife, Becca, is with Antifa and part of a vast left-wing conspiracy to overthrow the government. Yeah, we protect our own. We don't protect Renee Good. We're with ICE, Border Patrol. We don't protect Renee Good. We protect our own, our gang. We have the same uniform, same colors. We're a gang. We're a brotherhood, which is why they are susceptible to mini police riots. Greg Bovino will say, "You don't understand how dangerous it is to be an ICE agent." Well, it's dangerous if you're a stupid rageaholic who violates all DHS protocols by standing in front of a vehicle, and then as it drove off, you fire 3 shots into the driver's side window. Yes, it's very dangerous to be an ICE agent if you're stupid and have rage issues. Bovino, despite all the evidence, still insisting on Saturday morning that Preddy was brandishing a weapon, not a cell phone. But I guess if you're Greg Bovino, a cell phone is a deadly weapon because it kills your career and reputation. And there will be a legal day of reckoning once the Democrats gain back one chamber of our Congress, either the Senate or the House. These people will be held accountable legally. The BBC reporting Greg Bovino says the ICE agents involved in the deadly shooting are still working. They're still on duty, but he moved them out of Minneapolis for their own safety, not the safety of Minneapolis residents or whatever community they're now terrorizing. He moved them out of Minneapolis for their own safety. You know, traditionally, when law enforcement is involved in a shooting like this, the officers are told to take some time off pending an investigation. But there isn't going to be an investigation of Renee Good's executioner. We'll see what happens with Alex Preddy's executioners. Earlier this month, CBS News, Barry Weiss's CBS News, reported that Greg Bovino said not a single ICE agent has been disciplined in the past year. That's what they've been saying. Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, and Todd Blanche, the deputy attorney general, said there will be no civil rights investigation into the killing of Renee Good. ICE will conduct an internal investigation. Not one single ICE agent has been disciplined in the past year. Rewarded. This is what Trump wants. He wants to terrorize the American people. The message is clear. If we can do this to a 5-year-old, if we can do this to a wounded Iraqi veteran, if we can do this to a pregnant woman and a grandmother, we can do it to you. So watch what you say. The BBC reporting Greg Bovino on Sunday said there should be an investigation of this shooting of Alex Preddy to establish the facts. Yes, Greg Bovino needs to know what the facts are so he then knows what to lie about. All right, I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you so much for listening. I'm trying to do more shows. There's a lot going on, and we need to bear witness, so I'm trying to do more shows. Thank you to Bob and Mila for keeping the conversation civil in the chat room. If I made any mistakes, please correct me. I did refer to the executioners of Alex Preddy as ICE agents. From what I understand, they're claiming they're Border Patrol officers, but we'll see if that's true. So if I made any mistakes, let me know. I issue corrections here. So it's a hard show to do because I'm an open book here. I invite you to correct me. Read the comments. I read all the comments. I do not want to make any mistakes. Read the comment section. See how many mistakes I made. Everything I tell you is true. Everything. Subscribe to my newsletter. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you for listening. Go be with other people. Protest. If you're alone, you'll begin to think you're going crazy. This is the definite. Read Timothy Snyder, Jason Stanley. Read about the authoritarian playbook. They do the whole idea is to have an event, have many events happen, and convince enough people that what they're saying isn't real. And Trump is great at pretending to be reasonable. All right, hang in there.